Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Excellent. Audience response. Fellows and friends, welcome to the Royal Academy of Engineering for the 2023 Hinton Lecture. Thank you so much for joining us, both those of you who are in the room here today and our viewers who are watching our live stream from all around the world. My name's Hayaatun Sillem, and I'm the CEO of the Royal Academy of Engineering and the Queen Elizabeth Prize for Engineering. And before we begin, I have just a couple of housekeeping notices for the audience in the room today. We have not been informed of any fire drills, so if you do hear an alarm, please follow the Academy staff who will make themselves known to you and direct you to the nearest exit. I would also appreciate it if you could turn your mobiles to silent for the duration of this event, as we are live and recording. The Hinton Lecture is the Academy's flagship annual lecture, which is named after the late Lord Hinton of Bankside, the first president of this Academy. The Academy's current 5-year strategy sets an overarching goal to harness the power of engineering to build a sustainable society and an inclusive economy that works for everyone. And our Hinton Lecture is a key platform for us to engage with some of the most important engineering challenges and projects in the world. Over the years, our lecturers have covered everything from last year's brilliant lecture on the Elizabeth Line by Mark Wilde to lectures addressing broadband connectivity, robotic surgery, and the Large Hadron Collider. We've heard from leading engineers and innovators, industry leaders, politicians, and even Time magazine's first ever Kid of the Year, the very impressive science and engineering prodigy Gitanjali Rao. This year, our Hinton Lecture is focusing on the role that engineering can play in enabling our ambitions for a sustainable society. I am absolutely delighted that in a moment I will be welcoming to the stage Thomas Thune Andersen, Chairperson of Ørsted, Lloyd's Register Group, Lloyd's Register Foundation, and VKR Holding, to deliver his lecture, The Winds of Change, Engineering a Greener Future. Through the story of Ørsted's pivot from black to green energy, Thomas will show how a shared vision with social purpose, a shift in mindset, and a systemic approach to engineering can create a more sustainable world. Thomas will also explain how he champions the nature-positive call to governments, businesses, and citizens to drive action on a global scale to halt and hopefully reverse the loss of our natural systems. And he will share a great example of how social purpose and business can align to powerful effect, through telling the story of a centuries-old maritime classification society which created Lloyd's Register Foundation to serve society and keep people safe. Please welcome to the stage our 2023 Hinton Lecturer, Thomas Thune Andersen. Thank you.
Our home has treated us well. But as temperatures increase and sea levels rise, it's time to change the way we treat it. It's not easy to change our ways, but if we all look beyond our own walls and see our home for what it really is, it might change you. Like it's transforming us from a black to a green energy company. We no longer produce oil and gas and have decided to stop all use of coal to focus entirely on green energy. And we've already built the world's largest offshore wind operation, enabling millions of people to benefit from the powerful forces of the wind at sea. We want to help create a world that runs entirely on green energy. Because the place we all call home needs love, but love means nothing without action.
We all know the world is changing rapidly. The impacts of climate change are shifting the landscape and putting safety and resilience across the maritime supply chain at risk. This is why we need to remove existing silos and act now, together, to build one system that delivers for all, without causing harm elsewhere. To do this, we need to hear voices from across the system and across the world. bringing together stakeholders that don't usually talk in order to collectively agree on the way forward. We have a vision at Lloyd's Register Foundation to create a truly global and distinct maritime system coalition where collaboration and innovation break down walls and actions deliver scalable impact. A center which drives diversity, inclusion, and equality, and supports a just transition, not just in shipping, but across the wider maritime ecosystem and the industries that rely on it, interact with it, and help keep it afloat. Let's work together in a way that's never been done before. Let's build a sustainable maritime economy that embeds safety across the system and fulfills a global social purpose for the benefit of everyone.
Good afternoon. I'm going to start with a confession, if I may, in such a hollowed company as we are in here today. I am not an engineer, so I'm naturally not going to preach to you today about the role of engineering and engineers. You know that far better than I do. This afternoon, however, I am really looking forward to creating a debate with you all about the opportunities we have collectively based on engineering to further raise our hopes and ambitions to create a more sustainable world. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today with the Academy and would like to thank the organizers and management for the invitation. Before I take the opportunity to address today's topic in a more structured way, I would like to share my belief that successful companies in today's world are those that are purpose-driven. But what does that mean? A practical way to address this is to ask a simple but very difficult question. What is a global challenge that you as a company want to be part of solving? What I would like to share with you today is a story of such purpose and a story of energy transformation. An energy transformation that was driven by a desire to tackle a global challenge affecting the world and a story in which engineers played an invaluable role. I want you to think of this desire as something I call social purpose. During this lecture, I'll also share another story of social purpose in a different setting and consider how social purpose can be a North Star with which to attract the next generation of engineers. To put some structure in this lecture, I will address 3 points. The first, the world needs engineers to look at big global challenges and think outside their specific area of expertise. Easy to say. Engineers have the ability to change the world. Everyone in this room knows that. Engineers take the science and the technology research and they turn it into action that can help both people and the planet. They are the glue that holds everything together. But in my experience, not everyone else out there in society really appreciates this. There's work to do in shaping how the world views engineering and the role it can play in tackling some of the biggest issues we see today. The world we live in today is changing significantly. You might say, but the world has always changed. It is ever changing. You would, of course, be right. But we must work together to solve the tomorrow's challenges and not focus on yesterday's. There's a global agenda that, geopolitics aside, is focused on some things that I personally find very crucial. ESG, sustainability, and the drive to zero. The drive to net zero is one of the biggest global challenges we face today as we fight to save our planet and make it a place for future generations to thrive. Energy production and use are responsible for 73% of global greenhouse emissions. So transforming the way we power our world is one of the most important things we can do to fight climate change. Energy transformation sits at the heart of this. How can engineering and commercial teams work together to come up with solutions that aren't just environmentally sound, but also make good business sense? How do we bring these two disciplines together to create stable greenhouse business that are financially viable while tackling this big global challenge? A case study in point is Ørsted, a renewable energy company based in Denmark, which I have been fortunate to be involved with since 2014. Ørsted is taking action to create a world that runs entirely on green energy. Ørsted used to be Danish oil and natural gas, or Dong Energy, but changed name in 2017 to reflect its transformational shift from an energy company based on oil and gas to one based on renewables. You hear lots of stories in the press and in books on corporate success stories. And this is one, in all modesty, a success. In fact, it earned the number 7 spot globally in the Harvard Business Review's top business transformations of the last decade. What you won't hear about is how a lot of that success comes down to a leap of faith and lucky timing, and how we really needed a shift in engineering mindset to make it happen at all. So we had an energy company which was involved in many different projects, from very traditional oil and gas business through to, for example, electrical cars. But we could see that coal and oil were quite literally burning platforms, and we wanted to see a more sustainable future, even if some of those more traditional aspects of the business were profitable and commercially very attractive. Of course, we knew that a more environmentally sustainable business still had to be a profitable business. You can focus on the future, but you also need an economic model that enables it to prosper. This left us with a decision around our two biggest businesses, which was the oil and gas business being significantly larger than the wind business. At that time, we were a small to medium-sized oil and gas company. If we invested all the money we could possibly invest, and we had real success in the oil and gas business, we could maybe move 2 or 3 spaces up the ranking, but we would still have been a small, medium-sized oil business. Or we could use the same amount of money and put it into wind, where we could potentially be a major player, if we could indeed prove the business model. The big challenge was, however, that in the wind market, the cost of electricity was still far too high compared to other new build power generation technologies, as it was a fairly young technology. The first commercially scaled wind farm, Hornsea 1 in Denmark, was only commissioned in 2001. At board and management level, we were very aligned. We all shared a belief that we could do something different, and all shared a purpose, a social purpose, which was that we believed in a world that runs entirely on green energy. We came at it from different angles. Only myself and maybe one other colleague in the boardroom had an oil and gas background, so you can imagine there was not too many people in the room with romantic views on the oil and gas industry. And this enabled us to home in on a strategic direction at a macro level and ensure we had our eyes firmly on the need for a greener future. Not everyone wanted to be on this journey. While we had some excellent oil and gas engineers at the time, we sadly lost some great people because they couldn't or wouldn't see a different future, a greener future. So we recruited and developed others who were excited about renewables and could see what a more sustainable future could look like. Wind farms are obviously very different. We had to turn the whole thing on its head and look at a more systematic way of approaching the issue in order to make it viable, i.e. to think different from traditional oil and gas engineering. In transforming from black to green energy, we had to think about the whole supply chain as a system because we needed to get the cost of electricity down. This meant designing something that was perhaps not 100% optimal for a particular seabed area, but was optimal across the whole chain. This included taking into account the size of windmills, the kind of vessels needed to ship it, the lengths of time it would take to install, etc. This meant that instead of maybe ending up with maximum 100 windmills on a location, we only got 94. But we got them there faster, at a really competitive price, and that was a real game changer. To maintain the governmental and societal support needed to bring down cost, we decided to set a highly ambitious target to reduce levelized cost of electricity from offshore wind down to euros 100 per megawatt by 2020. This goal was set top-down as a visionary statement rather than relying on bottom-up engineering calculation, and was beyond what many thought was possible at that time. We significantly overperformed on this target, thus proving the viability of offshore wind. And it was engineers from different disciplines who came up with these solutions. They were experts in, for example, black belt, lean system methodologies and tools, thus focused on the whole supply chain. It was that change in mindset and approach that directly led to the success of the transition. It was the engineers who focused on designing the end-to-end optimal supply chain. So we decided to sell the oil and gas business, which was still more than 50% of revenue and the most reputable part of our business, and focus on wind, which at that time was only 15 to 20% of the cash flow. Risky, but the only way to ensure absolute focus. It was really important to take our stakeholders with us on the journey. This included communicating with policymakers, investors, employees and customers regarding the risks and opportunities driving transformational change and the need for a green business transformation. We explained how the transformation created value for each of them so that they all had a stake in the process. When we came across challenges, we took the time to explain the reasons for change and listened to their views. Ørsted was able to undergo its green transformation and learn these lessons along the way, partly due to the existence of a supportive policy environment. In particular, and very much so in the UK, there was sufficient visibility and certainty of offshore wind policy support and capacity volumes to allow investments and innovation at scale, which led to a virtuous cycle of technology maturing and reducing cost. The success of such an ambition loop is an additional policy learning that could be applied to other technologies and other industries. Rarely can one company undertake a successful transformation alone. Identify which partners and stakeholders outside your company you need to join forces with in order to move forward and achieve your goals. For Ørsted, this included working with our supply chain to scale technology and bring down cost, and with new investors to leverage capital, amongst other things. Removing the oil and gas business, in my opinion, was like crossing a stream. Each time you stood on a stepping stone, you picked it up and threw it away. So there was no way back to something which was more comfortable. We had to keep going. We were all adamant that we wanted a world built on green energy. Having that very clear shared goal or vision or social purpose and completely committing to it meant that whatever came along, whatever the challenges were, we were going to find a way around it, through them, over them, or maybe even under them. Timing also played a huge role. If we had done it perhaps 5 years earlier, we wouldn't have had the success we have had. We now see that wind farms are a huge success, but we didn't know that at the time. Sometimes it is about luck, doing it when the market is ultimately ready for it. This could be seen as taking a gamble, but it works because you are hell-bent on your purpose, and luckily it is a world that is ready for it. Not many companies share the luck side of their success stories. The lesson is, once you have made the decision, move forward to pursue your vision. Once you have had your blueprint and concept, you should go all the way and devote yourself, your capital and your talent to mobilizing behind the opportunity in order to scale and learn quickly. Another way to look at it is, did we just quit the oil and gas business? Quitting is a tough decision in its own right and can be very difficult. And it is often regarded as defeatist, whereas it is actually sometimes quite sensible to quit. It frees you up to look at other things. That was certainly the case with Ørsted. Quitting became winning. The company has increased earnings considerably, while reducing the use of coal in its power plants and building out new offshore wind farms. Since 2006, carbon emissions have been reduced by 86% in Scope 1 and 2. The focus continues to be on green growth based on offshore wind, biomass, green customer solutions, and power to X. Today, Ørsted is the largest offshore wind company in the world and amongst the largest global renewable energy companies, with over 11 gigawatts of capacity already installed. It has been named the most sustainable energy company in the world for the past 3 years and the most sustainable company overall in 2020. The world is facing a climate crisis, and it's indisputable that a transition to a sustainable energy system is needed. Of course, there's still more to do. Engineers are creating smart solutions, but I believe that by viewing engineering from a system perspective, we can create even smarter solutions. So we look at the macro, global issues first, the problem itself, and then instead of looking at each individual element, like what is needed from a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer, we look at the need from the whole system. We must look from the outside in rather than the inside out. What's next for the energy transition? We need to think even greener. We need to, for example, come up with solutions that don't just stop nature being harmed, but that actually help to improve it. What I would like to frame nature-positive engineering, an area that both Ørsted and Lloyd's Register, through the work of Lloyd's Register Foundation, are actively involved in. The way that some governments are looking at the energy transition right now is still very short-term. They are looking at the max short-term cash to be given for the right for a seabed. We need to be looking longer term, how biodiversity has to be better. It's not a question of it being nature neutral. Biodiversity should be better after we have been there, not the same and certainly not worse. The term nature positive is a call to governments, businesses and citizens to transform action on a global scale to halt and reverse the loss of our natural systems. We need to assess the impact that we have and take positive steps towards protecting and restoring nature. Nature-based systems can provide biodiversity, habitats, and social benefits. If we look at infrastructure, it's not enough to landscape a building site for biodiversity, as this doesn't compensate for the ecological losses of the land use, let alone its manufacturing. In 2021, G7 leaders announced our world must not only become net zero, but also nature positive for the benefit of both people and the planet. In the same year, in addition to the G7, 88 heads of state signed the Leaders' Pledge for Nature to reverse loss of biodiversity by 2030. It's also a goal supported by 126 Nobel laureates in the Our Planet, Our Future statement. More than 700 businesses have called for nations to reverse loss of nature as soon as possible. Nature Positive has become a movement. It makes business sense. The Future of Nature and Business report estimates that a nature positive economy can unlock $10 trillion of business opportunities by transforming the three economic systems that are responsible for about 80% of nature loss: energy, infrastructure, and food. Engineers can play a huge role in this. By talking about it, creating conversations around it, we can encourage others to also commit to nature-positive engineering. Engineers are trusted. In a world full of fake news and conspiracy theories, we need facts and figures from trusted sources more than ever. But it is not good enough just to sit in our individual bubble of a specific discipline or area of expertise and go and just do our things in isolation. By working together and getting out there and educating others, we can achieve greater things and have a much bigger impact. So let me take you now to my second point, which is much shorter. Engineer your own social purpose. As you can tell, I'm extremely passionate about social purpose. I believe it really is a way of the future for business who are in a position to do it. There's another movement, the B Corporation movement, which aims to change our economic systems towards collective action in addressing society's critical challenges and shift behavior, structure, culture of the capitalism. There are currently over 6,000 certified B corporations in more than 80 countries and over 150 industries. What these businesses share is a desire, a purpose, to do things for the good of society in one way, form, or shape. I see a real opportunity for us to move towards a world where business is actually a force for good and plays a leading role in positively impacting and transforming the global economy in a more inclusive, equitable, and regenerative way. By shifting our way of thinking, we can build business which contributes to the economic and social well-being of the communities in which they operate, putting stakeholders at the heart of their business model rather than just only the shareholders. This creates long-term value. Lloyd's Register is a great example of a social purpose business, a centuries-old maritime classification society which created the charity Lloyd's Register Foundation just over 10 years ago to serve society and keep people and assets safe. It is focused on profit with purpose. The Foundation's mission is to engineer a safer world, and it works closely with the Academy on several programs with global impact, including engineering skills where they are most needed. This mission supports the delivery of skills and education programs, leading to the development of engineering skills, capacity, enhancing safety standards, and infrastructure that remains safe and fit for purpose. How does the Lloyd's Register Group and the Lloyd's Register Foundation structure work to deliver its social purpose and benefit the communities in which it operates? Dividends from the commercial business are given to the foundation, and these are used to fund interventions and accelerate technologies to tackle safety risks around the world. The foundation's sole stakeholder is society at large, and it has identified a number of global challenges that it wants to be part of solving, often through engineering. The foundation is active in 142 countries and has delivered 253 grants of a value of around £160 million. It continues to identify and grant fund research, innovation, and intervention programs to tackle the global safety challenges related to infrastructure, maritime, and engineering. It has grown from just 2 people to over 30, and it continues to grow. Its social purpose is its North Star, and many new recruits cite the purpose as one of the defining reasons they choose to work for Lloyd's Register. Which leads me nicely to my last point. Use your purpose to increase diversity and attract the next generation of engineers. How can we and institutions like the Academy do more to encourage greater diversity in engineering? According to UNESCO, While the UK and other Western nations have struggled to attract women into engineering, female representation is substantially higher in countries in Eastern Europe and the Global South. Just 12% of UK engineers are female. This compares with more than 50% in Oman and Malaysia, and 3 in 10 in countries like Costa Rica, Vietnam, and Angola. And it is not just gender diversity we need to consider. We need cognitive diversity, different ways of thinking, new ways of thinking. How do we move away from people thinking of engineers as men in hard hats into people solving the world's problems and showcasing that more effectively? I'm convinced this will attract wider diversity into the sector and encourage more people in future generations to consider STEM. From 2021 to 2022, Ørsted increased its number of female staff by 17%. Still not enough. Lloyd's register has taken great strides in ensuring its recruitment processes celebrate and encourage diversity across the globe. They have multiple D&I colleague networks focused on gender equality, LGBTQ+, ethnicity and disability as part of their belonging strategy. I see firsthand some great examples of progress such as these, and I'm encouraged to see further improvement. According to a 2020 report, Wind Energy, a gender perspective, around 21% of the global wind energy workforce is women. 14% are occupied at a STEM function. STEM-related positions seems to have a relatively low female participation compared to other positions, for example, administration at 35%. We all have an opportunity to do more to encourage more women into our industries in STEM-related roles. So there's still much work to do. Can we use social purpose to encourage diversity? Yes, I strongly believe we can. A recent EY report states that 83% of Gender C believes it is very or extremely important to spend time on things that will be helpful in their future. Over half, 55%, are worried or extremely worried about the environment and climate change. Almost all, 97%, would like to do more to protect the environment. The same report shows that this generation gravitates to brands that shares their values, while quickly dismissing those that don't. They prioritize finding fulfilling careers where they are valued and can have impact versus making a lot of money. Their employment loyalty will be tested unless a company aligns with their personal values and makes them feel as if they have opportunities to grow and contribute. To be successful at this, your generation must be genuine about its purpose. This isn't about greenwashing. ESG must be measured accurately and consistently. Generation C can sniff out if you are not authentic. They won't overtly demand trust or transparency, but they will silently block you, literally and figuratively, from their lives and will be quick to call out wrongful actions. Trust will only be earned through complete transparency. Ultimately, young people want the chance to explore their skills and strengths and work for a like-minded organization that will help them play to their strengths rather than being shunted into a system that forces them into boxes. And for what reason? My challenge to us all is how can we help design a better way of working that supports people to use their skills and talents more effectively? How can we better demonstrate that as business, we have a social purpose to tackle at a global level, and that engineering is very critical in doing that? Ultimately, how can we work together to create the kind of organization that young people want to work for and be a force of good? My challenge to us all in the room and online is: find your purpose, tackle an issue, put engineering at the heart of the solution, tell everyone about it, and attract a more diverse workforce by doing so. If we can do this, we can engineer a brilliant future, a safer future, a greener future for everyone. A future in which the world will not just survive, but will actually thrive. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Thomas, for a really stimulating and profoundly optimistic presentation. I think we would all agree that you've described a vision of a future that is truly worth striving for. So Thomas has given us plenty of input for our discussion, and I know that you're really keen to engage with our audience both here in the room and online. Please use the QR code here to access Slido, whether you're in the room or online. You'll be able to enter your question for Thomas and also upvote the questions that other people are posting there to show which ones you would like to see answered. So I'm going to give you a minute to make sure that you will just navigate the technology and get the ball rolling with a question that is focused on leadership. You know, you've told us some extraordinary journeys in a way that makes it all sound very straightforward in some respects. But to undergo the kind of business reinvention that Ørsted has, I mean, you know, Harvard Business Review citing it as one of the best ever or the most significant business transformations. What are the leadership qualities that are needed to help an organization navigate through a transition that is so profound?
I think there are really two elements to leadership. I think one of them is the general debate that there is between a management team and a board and trying to create the vision. And of course it requires luck to actually get your head around something and see we can do it. But for me, leadership at the end of the day is about creating hope. So in a story like this one here, it is a wonderful one because you can actually try and create that vision around a world that runs entirely on green energy. And it becomes a hopeful thing. Somebody once argued that true leadership is a dealer in hope, whereas management is more about getting things done day in, day in. I think you need to make sure with that leadership that you might have the vision, but you need to be really sure you have the management, because otherwise you just leave a big gaping hole afterwards. So it is a combination of leadership and management. And
you know, I loved your metaphor of crossing the stream and removing the stepping stones as you go. But that takes such courage, doesn't it? How do you do what you described and get the right trade-off between risk and focus? Was that something that you struggled with in Ørsted, or did it all seem quite straightforward in the end?
It is a little bit when you go forward and something actually has worked, then things, you know, looked slightly more simple as you go back. I think we were in a situation where we had a burning platform because we were involved in many different businesses and they were all absorbing cash. Some of them were actually quite attractive, but we could just see that there wouldn't be a cash return for a long time. So we had a burning platform. And then we had this choice between the oil and gas business, which was a traditional one. And I think one of the real changes was realizing that however much success we would have in the oil and gas, we would still be the same company. Slightly better, slightly bigger profit, but we wouldn't really have changed it. And when that was coupled with an aspiration, because also some of the people in the organization before us as a board had taken some gambles and had done something in the renewables. So we did have a small wind farm and we believed in it. But we just knew that the cost of electricity had to come down. So it was this path about how can we get the cost of electricity down. And that is what we needed to believe in, that we could get it down. And this is here where the engineers solved it for us.
Do you think it's easier to drive that sort of transformation in a kind of semi-crisis situation, or can companies that are, you know, ticking along doing well also create that same sense of imperative to drive up the risk appetite in a positive way?
I think it's easier if you have a panic, but the problem then becomes: do you end up spending all your time on trying to solve the panic? So. They often say that you need to create a burning platform to get something done. And maybe that's what we should learn, and that's maybe where real good leadership comes in, because you might be able to create the vision and the hope and so on without necessarily having to have a burning platform, which everything else equal should leave you in a stronger position because you are not kind of putting out fires and so on. So I think it is very much around, and maybe one of the disciplines that we should get better at is to make big transformational changes even when we are not on a burning platform. And that I think then requires that you are prepared to quit things.
Yeah, it's a really interesting challenge you've posed. I'm going to resist the temptation to keep asking you more questions. I know there are other questions coming in. So I'm going to start with a question from Muir MacDonald, who's asked about small companies versus large companies. Who will be driving the energy transition in its next stages? Is it going to be the big former oil and gas majors or the smaller, more agile ones?
I think there's a change. I think the initial drive, and it has been an industry that has developed very fast, so we don't have a very long time, has been a few big players. We are seeing the oil and gas companies coming in, and we're also seeing them pulling it back a little bit, partly because some of the oil and gas business right now is very attractive. The bottleneck we have right now is the supply chain. There is simply, things are growing so fast, and with the inflation and the cost increases and so on, so there is a pressure. So I think some of the, if you call it smaller, they're not necessarily smaller, but those who are partly more part of the supply chain are the ones who are going to be able to dictate or encourage and see how fast we can grow. So whereas it beforehand was some big companies making some big decisions and taking the risks, now it is really about getting the supply chain up and running smoothly again.
And what do you think about the dynamic between those different companies within a supply chain? Are you seeing a lot of more collaboration? I know that in some sectors that, for example, working with small entrepreneurial companies has been crucial for driving innovation amongst larger companies. Yeah. What are you seeing in your particular sectors?
Jumped to my conclusion, we need to do more. Okay, by way of an example, when the offshore wind industry started, I was lucky to spend some years on the board of Scottish and Southern up in Perth, and nobody was talking to each other, and we were looking at the health and safety record, and it was dismal compared to the oil industry. And so we took the initiative to make an industry gathering, at least for the health and safety. And that proved, some significant improvements and so on. So, but it is an immature industry, and we are not really used to talking to each other yet enough. And also because if you look at the oil and gas industry, it is some quite well-defined players with a quite well-defined business model, with all the differences, of course, there is between some of them, but it's, I think, conceptually still the same. Whereas right now, a lot of the renewable is a little bit about who are going to be, is it the Ørsteds of this world, or is it the oil and gas companies of this world, or is it some of the utility companies, or is it some of the big financial players? We are seeing the big infrastructure companies investing a lot, and they are all investing, and I think that is extremely positive from the point of view that there is enough money, there's enough ambition and so forth. But we have a bit of a bottleneck with, if all those ambitions should come through right now, the supply chain probably can't carry it. Okay,
so that's a helpful answer. I've got lots of very diverse questions coming through, so I'm going to just be throwing things at you, Thomas. Talking again about the transformation itself, Lee Arshall is asking, how much you relied on engineering talent to drive your transformation in Ørsted?
How much we be getting new talent in?
There's no more detail, but any reflections on that topic? And also you talked about the importance of sort of engineers going beyond their traditional boundaries. So, interesting to understand how you create the culture where people are comfortable to do that and where there's perhaps more radical collaboration than has been the case in the past.
Slightly provocatively, we were sitting with an oil company and we were having, so the natural kind of gut reaction would be to take the people who are used to making big constructions offshore and so on. In the oil and gas industry, you tend to make a construction offshore to cover what's called P10 to P90. So you build something and you hope you might have a P10, i.e. a much better facility than you maybe had hoped for, but you have built it so you're ready to use it. But the difference in the renewable industry and in the offshore wind is that the difference between a P10 and a P90 is not very big. It is fundamentally a little bit more wind or a little bit less wind. Yeah. So you don't have that kind of big fluctuation. But if you started with a mindset that you need to build something that can deal with the most extreme positive, and you, for that reason, over-design and so on, that was what we had to get away from and say, no, we are just going to do what in average is good, because then we can bring the cost of electricity down. Some were prepared to take that journey. Others were not really prepared to take that journey. And I think more of those who were not prepared to take the journey are quite keen to take the journey now.
Yeah, I think we all know what you're referring to. Another question, how can we ensure we don't move back in this journey to green energy? And this particular person who's anonymous has said, the war in Ukraine has shown what can potentially happen when the system experiences a shock.
Yeah, so that incredibly sad situation is, if one looks at it from a renewable energy perspective, it is both, and can't say it like that, but it is both good and bad news. And if you can term that good news, is that there is become an awareness that large parts of the world, for example, the Western Europe and so on, needs to have more renewable energy to balance things. That doesn't mean that oil and gas is going away tomorrow. We absolutely need that still for a period of time, but we need to do it as delicately as possible as we are. But the same thing about the war there, of course, has driven up prices and raw materials and electricity. And the big issue we have right now is security. You know, we have real suspicion, and this is a statement only from myself, so as such I can't really quantify it more than that, but that the infrastructure risk of bombings, or are there actually explosives out on the seabed ready for something? And I think we need to make sure we get down and we look and we take it very seriously, and it is being taken very serious, because that would be a major blow to that balance which has come now on energy, or slightly better balance, if we have a big breakdown in the infrastructure there.
Absolutely, very, very sobering thought. So Kevin Flanagan has said, your argument leads with the financial drivers that are responsible for the high likelihood of missing the 1.5 degree target. But for social purpose business to succeed, we have to change the economic systems to cost the uncosted aspects of capitalism. So he's saying, isn't this a call for a carbon tax?
Yeah.
I hope I got that right. Excellent.
No, it is. But I think, as you say, the debate right now, and we need to all mature in all of this here, but the debate, of course, is very much around this specific thing and what is a carbon footprint or not on that one. But then we need to look at the system integration and what is the impact and how does that impact on nature. And I think we need collectively to become much better at trying to put some measures in. The science-based targeting and as Ørsted, we put 2 years back and got it certified, a science-based target approach all the way down to zero. Yeah. And I think the important thing is there that year by year by year, we have to show where we are relative to that. We can't just say in 10 years' time and then we don't have any measures along the way. So we have to stand up year by year by year and say how we do on that one. So I think the science-based and so on will help us a lot on being much more mature in how we try and address some of those issues there. And in doing so, putting a value on it.
Thank you. Well, this leads on nicely to Susan Guvenek's question, which is, can you give some examples of the nature positive solutions that Ørsted or others have employed or can think about for offshore wind?
Yeah, and on the nature, for me, it's a big issue. But if we focus in on the nature based itself, then there is a lot of that which is around making sure that the environment itself is better. And for example, with the wind farms, and this is becoming detailed, but we are thinking that if you have a piece of seabed, we need to have multi-use of it. So one thing is we have the wind farm. We as the owner, if you can call it, of that area, should engage with people who can help us in saying, how can we then best use that in connection? That can be seaweed farming. It can be maybe mean that we don't touch the seabed at all. You know, it allows you that. We are involved in a number of, so we are involved in different kind of projects. We're also in making artificial reefs. And we're actually seeing some slightly better results, a little bit faster than we thought about some of these artificial reefs, and we are seeing a little bit more coming along. There's a long way to go, planting seaweed and so on. So that's because we own the, or we have access to that. But we as a company are not the ones to say, oh, we should do something to save the cod or the crayfish, because we need science to come and help us with that. And this is where sometimes we get in the dilemma, because some science are in love with codfish and others are in love with seaweed, and we need to get them together and say, but what is holistically the best one right now?
But I think that's also another reminder that you come kind of asking sometimes engineers to take a very different approach in the context of nature-based solutions to the ones that they maybe have traditionally been engaged with. So carbon's a little easier to get your head around than some of these multidimensional challenges that you're describing. So do you think that we have an engineering workforce with the skills to incorporate nature-based approaches into their engineered world?
Of course we have. Smart people, it's a question of kind of getting the vision and asking, and this is stereotyping things because there's thousands of people who are asking those questions, but it is this. By way of an example, if you're, for example, making a new seawall in a port and in a harbor, and you need to have it as strong as possible, so you go and get the best concrete, who knows about concrete and how to install that and so forth. But maybe the solution is better to make one that doesn't last as long, but is maybe made of wood, if that is sustainable. And in doing so, it actually has an interface with different animals or larvae or whatever that then creates environment that a concrete wall wouldn't do. So then you are back to the question about how do you put a value on that? But maybe sacrificing the last 5 years of lifetime is better.
I love your optimistic mindset. This is so refreshing. Someone else is perhaps being a little bit more challenging, saying that actually wind turbines and particularly blades are not always decommissioned sustainably. And they're asking what Ørsted is doing to look at that whole life model for wind energy, and how do you incorporate that into your business model so that we do achieve sustainability through the entire life cycle?
And that is also a very relevant question. They're all very relevant. And again, the immature industry meant that for the first few years, but still a lot has been made, the discussion about decommissioning wasn't really there. It was a question of getting it out. Fortunately, decommissioning is becoming a very big part. I think a company like Ørsted and others, we have an obligation now, as we talk about scope 1 and 2, but especially scope 3, is to see and invest in our supply chain and invest together with them in how can we do that. So on the very specific examples, we are beginning to see the first windmills and the blades now coming out, which I'm told are much more easy to decompose afterwards and so forth. So it is an absolutely relevant question. 3 years ago, there was not very much talk about it, and I really feel that it is top of the agenda, but there's so much to do still to actually come up with the solutions.
And of course, Lloyd's Register Foundation and the Academy are working together on a safer end of engineered life mission, which we believe is very important for this and so many other aspects of our engineered infrastructure. A different question from Richard Wilde this time. Is there enough investment going into energy storage? And are you investing in this area? I don't know whether he means personally or professionally, but you're welcome to answer either way.
Yes. And yes. Energy storage is a crucial component because a lot of the renewable, of course, is intermittent, and we need to kind of find out. So just by making more and more of it, it automatically becomes slightly less intermittent because you just have it spread out more and so forth. But energy storage for me is many different things, and there's a lot of focus right now on the storage and using the electricity to lift water up in water reservoirs and bring them down again and so forth. There's a lot of focus on hydrogen, because for me that is a storage as well, because we are converting that electricity into something that is contained, the green. Or
while you're on the way, someone else has asked, where does hydrogen fit in the mix? If there's something more you want to say about that, please feel free to.
Yes, I think hydrogen is crucially important,
right.
and is only just starting. And without some of that, we won't really make the transformation in the hard-to-abate industries. So if we're going to get the maritime industry, the airline industry, the green steel, and the green fertilizer to work, it's very much driven by the fact that you can have the hydrogen. But my kind of vision is that the storage for green electricity is carrots. Because I see a world where you go into vertical farming, and the temperature and the control and the water you do there, you use much less water, you get much more outcome, and we turn our electricity into the climate and the temperature that comes into a carrot. And that's storage.
I will never see carrots in the same way again.
So, and that's some of the things, whether it's a good idea or not, but I think that's some of the questions we need to ask ourselves, which is slightly outside.
Amazing. Well, I can't believe we've sort of flying through the questions and time is ticking. So I'm down to really the last question for you. And I'd like it to be a bit more personal. So I'm going to turn to the question here posed by someone who's chosen not to give their name, which is, did you always have a purpose from your youth, or did it evolve through your life? It'd be lovely to hear a bit more about what's led you to have this passion that we can all feel, I think, being transmitted. I'm sure whether you're in the room or online, you can feel it. Particularly in a world where there is a lot of cynicism and a lot of frustration and lots of problems when we look around ourselves. Where does this optimism, this sense of purpose come from?
That's a good question. And I don't think, I certainly wasn't born with it. I think, and that's a bit self-centered, I think I'm born with curiosity, which means I want to listen to what others are saying, which has been a very, very bad example today because I'm the only one talking. But the whole thing about, the 2 ears and only the one mouth, and I think you learn so much by that. And I think that's where you pick up inspiration and you see people and you see people who have had successes or have purposes, who have done the right things, and you get impressed with that and you try and pick up a little bit from here and there on that one. And then I think, having had a chance to be on the Ørsted journey, to be on the Lloyd journey, where we are beginning to get involved in some of the practical things, and the cooperation, for example, with the Academy, where we are beginning to articulate some of them. And I think that just accelerates the ambition to do more.
Well, we're very glad that you have spent the last hour talking to us. And I think we've all really enjoyed and benefited from listening to you, Thomas. You're a very humble man, but I'm sure that many of us walk away feeling very, very inspired by what you've told us today and the practical implementation of this optimism, which is sometimes lacking when people can transmit the vision, but not in your case. You've been incredibly persuasive that in this challenging, this ever-changing world that we find ourselves in, engineering really does have a critical role to play within the profession, but also in reaching out and collaborating with other professions. I share your optimism, I share your conviction that if we can draw on diversity of thought, we didn't get onto that in the questions, and our creative spirit and ingenuity, that engineers can, will and must change the world we live in for the better. From your reflections on the importance of bringing people with you on that journey of transformation, to your emphasis on systems thinking, holistic thinking, your passion for nature positive solutions. You've given us so much wise advice and food for thought. And we're all on the hook, which I like, because Thomas has left us with this really important question. If the best way of addressing purpose is to take the single question, what is a global challenge that we want to be part of solving? That's something for us all to go away and hold ourselves to account on. So can we thank Thomas in the usual way for his excellent and, I think, important lecture, and for your patience in answering all of our questions. And thank you too to everyone who's joined us in the room and online. I hope you have enjoyed the discussion as much as I have, and we hope to see you again at an Academy event before too long. Thank you very much indeed.